just met someone. They told you their name. You heard it. You even repeated it once in your head. And 30 seconds later, it's gone. Not blurry, not almost there, completely gone. And now you're in a conversation with this person, calling them nothing, avoiding any moment where you'd have to use their name, secretly hoping someone else will say it first. If this is you, you are not rude, you are not careless, and you are definitely not alone. Your brain is just doing something very specific with names, and once you understand what, everything makes sense. Studies suggest that forgetting names is one of the single most common memory complaints among adults of all ages. Not faces, not facts, not where you put your keys. Names specifically. And here's the first unexpected thing. People who forget names easily are often the same people who remember everything else with unusual clarity. Faces, conversations, emotions, details from years ago. The problem isn't memory, it's what names actually are, and why your brain treats them differently from everything else. Here's the core problem. Your brain is a meaning-making machine. It stores information by connecting it to other information, by creating webs of association, context, emotion, relevance. The word doctor connects to hospitals, healing, authority, white coats, every doctor you've ever met. The concept betrayal connects to emotions, memories, stories, faces. But the name Michael? It connects to nothing about the person standing in front of you. It's an arbitrary sound that was assigned to them at birth, before you ever met them, with no relationship to who they are, what they do, or how they make you feel. Your brain has almost nothing to hook it onto. Psychologists call this the baker-baker paradox. If you tell someone, this man is a baker, they remember it easily. If you tell them, this man's name is Baker, they forget it almost immediately. Same word, completely different retention. Because baker as a profession connects to dozens of associations, baker as a name connects to nothing. Names are the hardest thing for human memory to hold, not because you're forgetful, but because they're the least meaningful units of information your brain ever has to process. Here's the one that will feel uncomfortably familiar. The moment someone tells you their name, you are almost certainly not in a state where your brain can encode it properly. You're processing their face, their energy, whether they seem friendly or guarded, what to say next, how you're coming across, whether your handshake was too firm. Your working memory, the short-term holding system where new information has to land before it can be stored, is already full. The name arrives and there is simply nowhere for it to go. Neuroscientists call this attentional bottleneck. Your brain can only process so much new input simultaneously. And in a first meeting, names are competing with an enormous amount of social information and losing. This is why people who are more socially anxious forget names at even higher rates. The more cognitive load the social situation creates, the less capacity remains for encoding a new piece of arbitrary sound. You weren't distracted, you were overwhelmed. Here's something most people don't know. Memory is not a recording device, it's a prioritization system. Your brain is constantly making decisions about what to store and what to let go, based on how important, emotional, and irreplaceable the information seems. And here's the uncomfortable calculation it makes about names. I can ask again. Someone else will say it. I'll see it on their phone. I'll figure it out. Your brain treats the name as retrievable, so it doesn't bother storing it. This is the same reason you forget where you parked when you're confident the parking app will tell you. Or why you don't memorize phone numbers anymore. When the brain believes it has an external backup, it outsources the storage. Names feel retrievable, so your brain doesn't encode them with the same urgency as truly irreplaceable information. Here's the part that makes it all make sense. Research consistently shows that name memory exists on a spectrum, and where you fall on that spectrum is largely determined by how your brain naturally processes verbal versus visual information. People who are strongly visual thinkers, who process the world through images, patterns, spatial relationships, tend to be significantly worse at encoding arbitrary verbal labels like names. They remember faces with exceptional accuracy. They remember how the room was arranged. They remember what you were wearing and what you ordered. But the name, the one purely arbitrary verbal tag, slips through. Meanwhile, people who are more verbally oriented, who think in words and language, tend to retain names much more easily. This isn't intelligence. This isn't effort. This is cognitive style. And research suggests that people who forget names easily are disproportionately represented among highly creative, intuitive, and visually oriented thinkers. Your brain isn't broken. It's just specialized. So here's what we know. You forget names easily because names are meaningless sounds with no memory hooks, because you're cognitively overloaded the moment you hear them, because your brain treats them as retrievable and doesn't prioritize storage, and because your particular cognitive style may simply process verbal labels less efficiently than other types of information. None of this is rudeness. None of this is laziness. None of this is a sign that you don't care about the person. In fact, people who forget names often remember the emotional texture of a conversation with far more accuracy than people who remember every name perfectly. They remember how you made them feel, what you said that was interesting, the expression on your face when you laughed. They just can't tell you what you were called. The next time you forget someone's name 30 seconds after hearing it, you're not experiencing a failure of memory. You're experiencing a brain that is wired for meaning, overwhelmed by social input, and making a rational, if inconvenient, decision about what to store. And if it helps, the people who remember every name they've ever heard, they're often the same people who can't tell you anything else about the conversation. Memory is always a trade-off. The question is just what your brain chose to keep. If this video made you feel a little better about that awkward moment of calling someone "hey" for 3 weeks, share it with someone who does the same thing. And subscribe, because every week we take a behavior, a quirk, a thing about being human that nobody explains, and show you exactly what's happening inside the brain that creates it.